All right, so we're diving into this new 13-inch iPad Air. And, I think a lot of people are trying to figure this one out.
Yeah.
What are the details that really matter beyond just like looking at the spec sheet?
Yeah, totally. And one thing that this reviewer really kind of zeroes in on is how Apple is using color with this one. They really emphasize this new blue.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because is it just like, oh, here's a new color? Or
Yeah.
is there more to it than that?
Well, color in tech, I mean, it's always been kind of a statement, It's not just about aesthetics, right? Like, remember those colorful iMacs way back when?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, those weren't just about being different. They were sending a message about who those computers were for?
So are you saying, like, this blue is kind of like sending a similar message? Like, what kind of user do you think this blue is for?
It's interesting to think about, blue is often associated with calmness, productivity, maybe even like a touch of luxury, right? It's definitely not your typical silver or space gray.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if they're trying to target a specific kind of professional, someone who wants a device that looks as, sophisticated as they feel.
Right.
Okay. So moving on to the brains of this thing, the M3 chip. And the reviewer keeps using this term Apple Intelligence. But I'm kind of curious, what does that even mean for actual performance?
Yeah, it's not just about like raw power or anything like that. I mean, the M3, it was designed to work with iPadOS specifically, and that makes a huge difference. Like just how smoothly everything runs.
Yeah.
Apps launch faster, multitasking is way more fluid. Even if you're running like really demanding creative software, it works.
Yeah, and they even mentioned in the review that some apps that used to be like Mac only, high-end Mac only,
Right.
are now running on this iPad Air. So like, what does that mean for someone who wants to use this for professional work?
It's a big deal. It's like you could be editing video, or doing graphic design, maybe even some coding, all on this, super portable tablet.
Right.
It's starting to blur the lines a little bit between tablets and laptops. You know what I mean?
So you're saying it's a compelling argument for someone who needs both power and portability.
Totally.
All right, so let's talk screen. We got to look at the screen. And it's Liquid Retina, which we've seen before, but this reviewer was really impressed with how it performs outdoors.
Yeah, me too. I mean, they made a big deal about how usable it is, even in direct sunlight.
Which is, that's a big deal.
Huge.
For people who actually want to use this thing outside,
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, you don't realize how annoying glare is until you have a device that actually, solves that problem.
Right. Imagine, sitting at a cafe trying to work and not having to fight with the glare.
It's a game changer.
Okay. Next up, something I found kind of interesting, both cameras front and back are 12 MP. Is that even necessary on a tablet?
Well, I mean, think about how people use tablets these days, right? Like video calls are huge. And depending on what you do, you might even use the camera for work stuff.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And I think, wasn't it the front camera they were saying does really well in low light?
Yep, they specifically called that out,
Yeah.
which is huge because you know how it is. You're on a call and the other person's just like this shadowy figure, can't even see him.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Yeah, so it's those little details, I think, that show that Apple is actually thinking about how people use these things in the real world.
Totally. Okay, a couple other features just to touch on them. Wi-Fi 6E and Touch ID.
Right.
So assuming Wi-Fi 6E is the latest and greatest. But what does that actually mean for the average person?
It's all about speed and efficiency, especially if you're in a crowded Wi-Fi area, like a conference or a coffee shop, tons of devices trying to connect.
Right.
Wi-Fi 6E helps with that, so you get a faster, more stable connection.
So if you're someone who, needs a good connection for work or even just streaming, that's a big deal.
Oh, yeah, big time.
And Touch ID, that's just kind of it just works, right?
Yeah, exactly. But what I thought was interesting is that the reviewer, they talked about the feeling of security you get with Touch ID, Like in a world where data breaches are happening all the time.
Right.
It's nice to have that extra layer of protection.
It's like locking your front door.
Yeah.
It just gives you that peace of mind.
Exactly.
Okay, now the claim that every device makes, all-day battery life.
Right.
But I gotta say, with the M3 chip and that screen, I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah, it's good to be skeptical, but Apple, they have a pretty good track record with power management.
Right.
It's not just about having a huge battery. It's about making the hardware and software work together,
So it's more about optimization than just, sheer battery size. So this is an interesting question for you then. Think about your typical day, how you use your devices,
Hmm.
would this iPad Air actually last you all day, do you think?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Right, instead of just taking their word for it.
Yeah, instead of just taking the marketing at face value, right?
Right.
You got to think about how you actually use these things.
All right, so we've talked design, performance, versatility, battery life,
Mm.
but the reviewer kind of hinted that there's something more to this iPad Air, something beyond the specs. What do you think they were getting at?
That's a good one. I think I think they're saying it's more of a statement, like this iPad Air, it's not just a device, it's for someone who wants something that reflects their style, like their aspirations, even.
Like, it's not just any tablet. This is an iPad Air.
Exact.
And that kind of goes back to what we were saying about the Blue. It seems like they're really pushing this as a premium device, not just the features, but the whole look of it.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's about standing out, not just blending in, And that's
Yeah.
not just the color, it's the design, the materials, everything about it. Just it feels premium.
I remember when I first held an iPad Air, there's just this feeling. It's so light, so thin. The edges are so smooth.
Hmm.
It almost feels like, I don't know, like a piece of art more than a piece of tech.
I think that's a great way to put it, It's meant to be, I guess, admired and used.
Right.
And speaking of using it, I mean, let's talk about what makes this thing so versatile. The reviewer, they really highlighted how it can be used for both creative stuff and productivity.
Right. They mentioned everything from like students taking notes to artists sketching to
Mhm.
professionals juggling a million things at once.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just for the casual user.
Right.
And I think that's where the M3 chip really shines. It's not just about running demanding apps. It's about that seamless experience.
Mhm.
Like you can focus on what you're doing and not worry about the tech getting in the way.
Yeah. And I think I read somewhere that the M3 allows for some pretty crazy multitasking, like multiple apps side by side, dragging and dropping stuff between
Yeah,
them.
it's like having a mini desktop right in your hands.
Oh, what about the Apple Pencil? They improved that too, right?
Oh yeah, big time. I mean, you can scribble notes right on the lock screen now, or like annotate PDFs and stuff super easily.
It's all about removing those little like points of friction,
Yeah.
right? Just making it effortless to do whatever you need to do.
Exactly.
But let's be real, all this talk about productivity and creativity, it doesn't matter if the battery dies halfway through the day. So how much can we trust this whole all-day battery thing?
Well, I mean, remember what we said about Apple and power management? They've really designed this thing, like the M3 and the display, to work together so they use as little power as possible without sacrificing performance.
So it's not just about a bigger battery, it's about
Yeah.
how the whole system is designed, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's good, especially for someone like me who, tends to push their devices pretty hard.
Yeah, and the reviewer actually said that the battery exceeded their expectations. They were able to use it all day and still had plenty of juice left over.
That's impressive, especially with everything this thing can do.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Okay, so we've talked design, performance, battery, but do you think this iPad Air is only for people who are like already all in on Apple stuff?
That's a good question. I mean, it definitely works really well with other Apple devices, but I don't think it's like a requirement.
Right.
The iPad Air, it's a great device on its own, for anyone who wants something portable, powerful, and, well, looks good.
So even if you don't have an iPhone or a Mac, you can still get a lot out of this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you might miss out on some of those like ecosystem features, but the core functionality is still there. And it's a great entertainment device too. Streaming, gaming, music.
Yeah, that Liquid Retina display has got to be amazing for watching movies. It's like a portable cinema.
Oh, totally. And the speakers, they're surprisingly good too.
Oh, yeah.
The reviewer actually mentioned how immersive the sound is, which is, I mean, it really adds to the whole experience, whether watching something, listening to music, even playing games.
Makes you wonder if they designed those speakers with spatial audio in mind. I can imagine listening to, like, a podcast with spatial audio on this thing. That'd be wild.
Oh, yeah, it would definitely add a whole other level to it. But speaking of adding levels, we got to talk about the elephant in the room, the price. I mean, this is a premium device, and it comes with a premium price tag.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest question for most people, right? Like, is it worth it?
That's the million-dollar question, and there's no, like, easy answer. It really depends on what you need, what you're looking for.
Right.
But what we can do is, I guess, look at the overall value.
So let's like break down that value. We've talked about the design, the performance, how versatile it is, the battery. So for someone who's trying to decide if this is the iPad for them,
Hmm.
what are the big things to consider?
I think the main thing is, like, how are you going to use it, If you're looking for something that can handle, like, work and play, something powerful enough for serious stuff, but still portable, then this iPad Air is, it's worth checking out.
And it seems like Apple really put a lot of effort into making it, easy to use. Like everything just flows from the M3 chip to the display, the Apple Pencil. It all just like works together.
Yeah, totally. And they've also like thought about the little things, like the cameras, the security, the battery life. It's not just about, throwing in a bunch of specs. It's about making sure those specs actually like make a difference for the user.
And we can't forget about how it looks.
Hmm.
You know, that blue is pretty eye-catching, and the whole design is like sleek and modern. It's something you'd be happy to show off.
Oh yeah, for sure. It definitely makes a statement, but at the end of the day, the decision to buy it, it comes down to, what you like and what you can afford.
It's kind of like choosing a car, right?
Yeah.
Like you might love the way a sports car looks and feels, but if you need something to like haul groceries and the kids around, it might not be the best choice.
Exactly. You got to balance your needs with your wants and figure out what's most important to you. But I think it's safe to say that, Apple has created a pretty impressive device with this iPad Air.
Yeah, they've managed to pack a lot into such a thin and light design, and they didn't have to sacrifice like style or usability to do it.
And that's what makes it so appealing, right? It has the potential to like really enhance your productivity, your creativity, your whole digital life even.
So to wrap things up, would you say this iPad Air is a worthy, successor to the previous ones?
Yeah. I think it's more than just a successor. It's like an evolution, They took everything that was great about the iPad Air and made it even better, added some key improvements, and I think the result is a really standout device.
Sounds like Apple's raised the bar.
Ah,
Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive: the design, the performance, all the features, the value. Hopefully, we've given you a better idea of what this iPad Air is all about and whether it might be right for you.
and if you're still not sure, I'd say, do some more research, read some reviews, maybe even try one out in a store if you can. The best way to know if it's right for you is to actually like hold it in your hands, try it out.
That's great advice. And remember, tech is always changing. What's amazing today might be old news tomorrow. The important thing is to find devices that help you do what you need to do and achieve your goals, whatever they might be.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it helpful. Until next time, stay curious.